Every child's going to be different, and it really depends on the emotional climate in the home.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello, my name's Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm the author of 6 books about raising happy families, and I'm here with my wife and life partner and my podcast partner, Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie.
I had a really proud mama moment this morning.
Yeah, really?
We rode the kids to school, and because we were running a little bit behind, I actually let the kids push their bikes up this steep embankment to put their bikes away in the bike rack all by themselves. Usually I would help them. So Lily, Miss 10-year-old, she pushed her bike up quickly and got it all settled, but she could tell that Emily was still struggling to get back up the hill all by herself. And so Lily actually came down the hill, helped Emily pull the bike up, and then I watched her help her to put it into the track, and Emily took her helmet off. And then Lily started to walk off and Emily called out to her, and the next thing, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the next thing, there was this massive embrace. They gave each other a big hug, and Emily trotted off to class and said, "I'll see you this afternoon." And it was just one of those little gold fleck moments where I was just so elated.
Because yesterday afternoon they weren't doing that in the living room. Let me tell you.
Just so elated that in that moment and in that space there was just this acknowledgement, I love you, you're my sister, and I'm so grateful that we're together.
We have those moments from time to time, and we've got to savour them because they're not common enough. But I'm so glad that you shared that. We received some correspondence via the podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au email address. If you'd like to give us any feedback on the podcast or ask us questions that we should discuss on the podcast, that's how you do it. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. And Roslyn sent us an email. Here's what she said. Hi, Justin. I loved your podcast on making mornings magic and wanted to ask for similar advice on how to manage afternoons with kids. When's the best time to start homework? How much time should be given for after-school wind down, rest and play? If families do allow afternoon and evening screen time, when's the best time and for how long, assuming it's for fun and not for learning? As kids are usually tired and unresponsive immediately after school, when's the best time to ask them about their day? Basically, do you have any suggestions on a schedule to manage the hours after school to bedtime for school-age kids?
Well, I'm so glad that Magic Mornings, worked a treat for everybody.
I hope
so. It sounds like we've got a bit of work ahead of us to help make afternoons just as magic.
Yeah, afternoons are tricky though because you try to juggle the children. There's usually multiple children. Sometimes there's after-school activities for one but not the other. Sometimes you've got to go in different directions. You're tired and you're trying to organise the house. You're trying to organise washing, school bags, you're doing dinner, all that sort of stuff.
I think with the morning routine, we're all kind of headed in one direction, aren't we? We're all heading out the door, whereas in the afternoons, like you said, there's just so much going on. And so what are some practical tips that we can use to help us, kind of create some kind of system in our afternoons so that they can flow a little bit better for our families?
Well, I want to answer every one of Rosalind's questions, but there's a lot to get through. So let's step back for just a moment and consider one central thing, and that is, what do we want our afternoons to feel like? What kind of experience do we want our children to have as they reflect on, what their upbringing was? And I think that depending on the age of your child, the less that you can put into their afternoons, the better. If you've got the fortunate experience to have the capacity to let them go ride their bikes or go down to the park or spend time playing, I think that that's much more valuable than trying to cram their afternoons full of loads and loads of stuff, or alternatively letting them just hang out on screens all afternoon. We've used the technology tickets that are available on our website to great ends in that regard.
Yeah, well, definitely with our youngest, Emily, she was really struggling to kind of self-direct when it came to the use of screen time. As a 6-year-old, this is, very developmentally challenging. And so I just gave her 2 little roles. Before you're allowed to watch a screen in the afternoon, and you get 1 ticket a day, which is a half an hour pass. You have to have some time being creative and you have to have some time outdoors. I don't give her a time limit on it. She just knows that in order to be able to watch the screen, she needs to be creative and she needs to be outdoors. And I know I don't need to give her a time limit because they're two things that she absolutely loves doing.
And if you give her a time limit, she'll say, have I spent my 30 minutes outside yet?
That's exactly right. And so what I find usually is that by about 5:30, she's walking in the door and saying, hey, Mum, can I watch my TV now? Which is perfect because it just gives me enough time to wrap dinner up and get it ready on the table. And she's had some creative time, some outdoor time, and a little bit of screen time, and everyone's happy.
So next, let's see if we can answer those questions for Roz and work out the best way to structure afternoons so that they're not too structured, but we're getting the stuff done that needs to be done.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson and Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie Coulson. We're responding to an email that came through to podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au from Roz, who said, how am I supposed to get my afternoons right? You've told me what I can do for my mornings, but by golly, afternoons are challenging.
So I guess the first place to start is how much time do we give our children to wind down after school?
So that kind of goes back to the conversation that I had prior to the break, and that is that to the extent that it's possible, we give them as much time as we can. We don't want to have too many structured activities in the afternoon. I mean, if they've got swimming or they've got tennis or they've got whatever extracurricular stuff that's on, that's going to change things. They don't have time for the downtime because they get home from school and then they go to that thing. But if you do have relatively free afternoons, I'm going to say stretch it out. Let them have as much of that time as possible.
You know, I think extracurricular can actually be a part of downtime if it's something that your children are really engaged in. If they're doing it because mum says, you've got to swim, then clearly it's not really, going to float their boat, so to speak. But if it's something that they love, dancing or playing basketball or whatever, that's actually, really awesome downtime for them, even though it may be structured.
Yeah, choice is really critical there. But I would still say that they need to have unstructured time as well. And that gets really tricky the more activities that they're doing.
Well, the next thing, when's the best time to start homework?
Yeah, this is a big one. So I'm going to direct everybody, we'll put it in the show notes, to my homework letter. We'll
this
do
is a whole podcast all on its
We'll
own.
do a big podcast on that in the new year once school kicks off again after the summer break. But generally speaking, if your kids are in primary school, I'm going to say don't emphasise homework at all other than reading and the occasional project. There's no research evidence to support the use of homework. Now, I know that schools and teachers, that can be a bit of a dicey issue. Like I said, we'll address that down the track, but I would be saying don't even worry about homework if your kids are in primary school. If they're in high school, they need to get in and do their homework at the appropriate time for the appropriate amount of time.
Rosalind wants to know screen time. When's the best time and how long should I be letting my child or children be on screens?
I like your answer about the technology tickets. I think that is a really great way to approach it. Make sure that the kids have done all the stuff that matters outside of screens. And if they've done all of that, then give them a technology ticket and say you've got 45 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever amount of time you have agreed as a family suits what your family's all about.
So with the screen time and technology tickets, do they have to earn those tickets?
That's an interesting question. I wasn't expecting that. I don't think that kids should have to earn technology time because what it does is it devalues the thing that they've got to do so that they can have the technology. If you say, well, you've got to go out and do X, Y, and Z so that you can earn the right to use the tech becomes increasingly valued and the activity prior to that becomes devalued. And so what I like about our approach is we say, of course you can have screen time, but there are other things that we think are more important. So when you've done those things, then you can have some time on screens. It's a pretty subtle distinction, but it does make a difference.
Yeah, it goes back to that conversation we had with Alfie Cohn a few weeks ago, that whole idea of being punished by rewards. And one of our families actually suggested that while she doesn't make her children earn things, earn these technology tickets, if they've done something really good, she might actually kind of pass over an extra one to give them a little bit of extra time on their screens as a bit of a treat.
As a bonus.
Yeah, I liked that idea. I thought that was really cool. And then I guess the last thing that Rosalind really wanted to know was when's the best time to actually, work through your children's days, ask them how it was and what they got up to.
It's kind of an interesting question because every child's going to be different and it really depends on the emotional climate in the home. So sometimes our kids just want to tell us everything when they walk in the door, and other times they don't want to talk to us until dinner time. And I think if we can be flexible about that and just make sure that they know that we're available to connect, that we've got a genuine interest, that we really see them and hear them and value what they want to share about their day, it doesn't really matter when it happens. What matters is that they know that they can.
And I think, like you said, often our afternoons can be very busy, and the more children you have, the more complicated the afternoon can get. And so one of the things that we've found has been just so beautiful with our children is if we haven't had a chance to connect with them through the day, that last 5 minutes before they kind of close their eyes for the night, just sitting on their bed and having a conversation about the things that matter to them has been such a beautiful way for us to connect with them.
Well, we hope that answers your questions, Rosalind, and we hope that's been helpful for you as well. If you've enjoyed the podcast, we'd be so grateful for you to leave a rating and review at Apple Podcasts. That's how other people get to find out about the podcast and start listening to it so that they can make their families happier. Thank you so much for all the ratings and reviews that have been coming through. We are very grateful for those. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon, and our executive producer is Craig Bruce. If you'd like more information on how we can help your family to flourish, you can get all the info at happyfamilies.com.au, or you can follow us on Instagram or at Facebook, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families.